34. Rain, snow, and ice early overnight with a low of 31. Freezing drizzle and 26 at O'Hare. Your next news update at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon is stepping out on his wealthy leftist friends in Davos, ironically, where they convened last week. We talked about it a bit, you know, in the way that Dimon was essentially, if we're to believe him, take him at face value, suggesting that those who find Trump and Trump voters noxious should be a little bit more charitable because Trump was right about a few things and his supporters like him because he was right about these few important things. And one of the things that Dimon said was, about the thing that is most roiling Americans right now, particularly in urban centers, and that is lawlessness at the border, open border policy of this administration, effectively. Here's what Jamie Dimon had to say about that.
Would you take the deal that the Republicans have put on the table, though, which is we want this border immigration policy as we've laid out, and then we'll fund the rest? Would you rather take that than neither?
I have not read that deal in total, but I probably would take it. Yeah. We have to control the borders. We need more merit-based immigration. We need more seasonal immigration. We need more. We need DACA have a place here. We need a path to citizenship. If you do not control the borders, you are going to destroy our country. And so I think the people who think that somehow this is okay, so now they're sending the migrants into New York and stuff like that. So all of my super liberal friends, now they realize what a problem is. Did it have to be that? That we realize it. So we want to have a big heart for the world, but we have to
control the border. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For more on this topic and related matters, we're pleased to be joined again by Chris Arnade. He is a former financial services professional turned writer and photojournalist. Currently, he circumnavigated the country, right, and he put together this book, which is excellent, called Dignity, Seeking Respect in Back Row America. And now he must be working on something more global because he's circumnavigating the globe. Chris Arnade, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks to you for having me.
So, Jamie Dimon may not be your favorite person. He's not mine either. But what about what he had to say, particularly in the sense trying to middle the issue between his super wealthy leftist friends and the commoners?
I think there is certainly a disconnect based on class on how you see the issue of immigration and how you see kind of reality of American life, in terms of our cities. If you're wealthy enough, you can really just basically escape the problems that our cities currently have because you don't ever really encounter them. You have, effectively you live in a gated community, doorman building, let's say, or out in the suburbs in a large estate, and you don't generally use public transportation, or you live downtown and you get everything delivered to you. So you generally do not have to interact with the city in a way that most people have to interact in it. Which as anybody in who has ridden either New York City subways, LA buses, or in Chicago, the elevated, is in rapid decline.
Yeah, I know you recently were on the subway. This piece that you wrote at Unheard, coming back from Sofia, from Bulgaria, and just sort of the comparison contrast you had with your experience in your experience in that space, public transportation, in Bulgaria versus in New York City. I mean, I think that's sort of instructive in terms of what's happening to big city America. Can you describe that?
Yeah, I mean, in this particular case, I wrote about coming back from Bulgaria, but I can do it. I come back into the New York City. I flew into Chicago, coming from Korea a few months ago, and the contrast is just is jaw dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Korea, Bulgaria are much poorer than the United States. We're a very wealthy country, and yet the experience of getting from downtown Sofia or downtown Seoul to the airport versus the experience of getting from O'Hare downtown Chicago, and then what happens once you're in downtown is just it's night and day. Being on I think it's a blue line that goes from O'Hare downtown.
Yes.
Is that the one?
Yep.
How was that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I ended up making friends because I'm generally a friendly guy, but I think a lot of other people would have been scared by the situation. You're having people who are basically passed out and using it as effectively a mobile homeless shelter. It was filthy, and that's true in L.A. That's true in New York City. And not only is it filthy, but the actual process of getting onto the elevated, going downtown is just so much less efficient. And then once you're downtown, then you have to worry about your safety. I happen not to be someone who worries much about my safety. I'm a pretty large guy who knows how to navigate these spaces, but God help you if you're a single female. And you just basically want to kind of take the elevated mohair downtown at like 9:30 at night. It's just simply dangerous.
Right. And then getting back to O'Hare Airport, what was that experience like?
That took a lot of effort. No. I don't Uber. That's one of my rules. I did a bus to a train because I was actually down further south in Chicago. The entire process. I mean, what I wrote about is that the U.S. just simply doesn't have nice things. Like our cities are gross relative to the rest of the world, and that's really, given how wealthy we are, that's just simply shocking. And you don't really notice it. I mean, I understand a lot of your listeners notice it on a daily basis, but you don't really understand how disgusting it is, how offensive it is until you go somewhere else that is much poorer than us and come back. Then you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, like, what are we doing here?
Well, right. I mean, it's these things that have become sort of they've gone viral, I guess, for lack of a better description. The fecal map of San Francisco, this beautiful city, and this is what residents are dealing with. You can have a $3 or $5 million place, and you're still walking out to homelessness and all of the earmarks of it. New York City, the same thing. Story over the weekend, I think it was in the Post, about human waste in styrofoam cups in parks and elsewhere. And the interesting thing you write about too, and I just want you to develop this is what happens in high regulation, low trust regions, cities. And you say, well, the Western Europe, or even the developing world, they have a lot of high regulation. They're high regulation societies too, but they're higher trust societies. Why does that delta on trust, if regulation is constant, matter?
I mean, because like I tell people, if the government is a sole decider of what is right and wrong, then their job is effectively almost impossible. Right? You have to make assumptions that you can't assume the worst about everybody when you design a product, right? You can't think about what's the worst thing that someone's going to do and then have someone do it. You're not going to build anything if you're always worried about somebody, just coming in and messing shit up. There is a sense of social responsibility to the community most Europeans or Germans have, or most certainly in Japan, that's the case, where you don't need a policeman to sit around and watch you, because people simply will not behave in a way that is antisocial. They just know, they were raised not to do that. Their family will scold them. Their neighbors will scold them. There is a sense of shame that comes with erratic behavior, antisocial behavior. And in the United States, we have no sense of shame about being, I think we need to shame people for being, basically for being antisocial. One of the most amazing things in Japan is they have 7-Elevens in Japan. That's their big thing. And in front of their 7-Elevens, they have something called a grab and go. It's literally in front of the 7-Eleven. It's outside, and it's basically 2 cans of beer and maybe chips. Now, can you imagine if you had bags with two cans of beers and chips called grab and go outside of 7-Elevens in the United States? And they would literally grab and go.
Yeah, and they wouldn't pay.
People do not do that in these societies. They simply do not do that because they know that's not the proper behavior. And you can't, I understand people say, why don't police just enforce the rules? I agree police should enforce the rules that exist. But you're asking the police, you're putting the police in an almost impossible spot when they have to check people's behavior at every level. Where's the family? Where is people's sense of just being a decent citizen? Tells them not to do these certain things that people do. And we don't have that in the U.S. as to the degree we used to have it when I was younger, or to the degree they have it in other countries.
This is a social contract, and there's a lot of different philosophical versions of it, but it's something that all of the great philosophers understood. This is integral to a stable society, is a social contract that, yes, there will be some enforcement by the state, but it is really mainly meant among what does one citizen owe the other, and that's what you're talking about. That's what's deteriorating.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's deteriorated in the U.S. to except now. I understand that, there's a version of that will frustrate the right, which says that part of the problem is people want too much freedom, the freedom to do whatever to do anything, including aberrant behavior, antisocial behavior, but it's also much more of a thing on the left where this idea that you be you do whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do is valid. Whatever you want to do is just. Whatever you want to do is moral. You decide your own moral code. That's the problem in the U.S. is we have a sense of I can do whatever I want. Let my freak flag fly.
Yeah.
That includes defecating on the subway. So be it. And the thing is I happen to have. Probably relative to a lot of your listeners, a lot of empathy with the homeless. I've spent a lot of time working in that community and working with them. We have a mental illness and an addiction problem in the United States, and I'm relatively empathetic with those who are experiencing this situation. But at the same time, you cannot. We're doing them a great injustice too by letting them sleep in subways, which is going to guarantee bad interactions. You're talking about people who are also mentally unstable, physically, and emotionally in chaos. And you're putting them in tight spaces with lots of strangers. It's just a guarantee that bad things are going to happen. So it's not fair to the homeless to do this, to let them kind of wander anywhere. So it's very frustrating to me, the situation we find ourselves in the United States.
You're describing the Daniel Penny incident, basically.
Yeah, that's just a way situation should have never happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know all the details of that case. I don't want to get into it too much, but that situation should not have happened.
Well, there's something else too. And you mentioned at the outset we're much wealthier. What's New York City's GDP as compared to the entire country of Bulgaria? It's got to be a multiple. And so what do? Sort of like what we do with government schools. As Peace and Reason magazine last week, $61,000 is the yearly per tent cost of quote unquote safe sleeping villages in San Francisco. $34,000 in Portland, Oregon, almost $30,000 in San Diego, where they have a 400 tent safe sleeping site. and so on and so forth. And so I mean, the conversation about homeless or mental health with respect to me, even though I'm a conservative, is sort of like with government schools. I mean, I'm open-minded on the cost if you can tell me this amount of money will produce this result that we all want. But we don't have that in these big urban centers, and actually a lot of suburban areas too. We have just throw more money at it because monies we have and results is what we lack. But throwing more money at it gets me off the hook that we're doing something, even if that something is not moving the needle in a productive fashion.
I mean, part of the problem also is that certainly in California, New York, this is what goes to the regulation. If you want to build a new building or a new apartment, you just can't. The amount of impact studies you have to do to build anything in the United States is much less. You run into neighborhood associations. I don't want a new building going up 4 blocks from me because it's going to change my view, that sort of thing. One person can hold up, or one interest group can hold up any new product. So in general, we have a problem of kind of a low growth mentality in the U.S. in terms of infrastructure, because we environmentally study impact it to death, so nothing ends up getting built. So that's why when you say Southern California, that's why you look at the cost, building kind of shelters is just absurd because of the bureaucratic red tape. Now, I'll go one level deeper. Even if we had, a lot of people say the problem is we just need more homes, and I agree we should be more pro-growth in terms of building. But I also say, the product, it goes back to the low trust. You can put, people who have these problems, these addictions or mental illness into a home. That's not going to stop a lot of the erratic behavior. But it's not just confined to the homeless. The idea that you can do whatever you want in public spaces goes beyond just people who are living on the streets. It kind of infects a lot of people's mentality that they don't have to behave, in public spaces in a way that works well for the larger community. So, and that's effectively a family thing. Like, why, people need to feel a sense of like, my parents would be embarrassed if I did that. But a lot of people do not have parents who raise their children in a way that they feel, or have the parents where, the family needs to be.
Right. Sorry to
so
interrupt.
it goes like when the state, again, it goes back when the state is the sole person who tells you what's right and wrong. It's an impossible task.
Yeah, and it becomes, if it used to be right, don't do anything that you wouldn't want on the 6 o'clock news. But the attitude now is, I don't care if it's on the 6 o'clock news.
They want it on the 6 o'clock. They want to go viral.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Our culture is changing.
Chris Arnade is a writer and photographer. He's currently circumambulating the world. That's a long walk. He's also the author of Dignity, Seeking Respect in Back Row America. Chris Arnade, thanks so much for joining us again. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Happy New Year from Dutch Farms. Since 1987, Dutch Farms has been offering